I'm a girl, but I was raised as a boy by my mother because I didn't know how to be a girl. I harassed all the boys at school, especially the local tycoon, Qin Xiao, who said he'd never marry him. But after all, he was a boy, and was always seen as a monster by his classmates. For going too far, he was clubbed directly into hospital. But when I woke up again, I couldn't remember who I was. But there's a memory of another person in my head. This man was a top hacker. I think it's the soul traveling caused by someone's backstabbing. But suddenly, this person's consciousness directly invaded my body. Have I come back to life? It seems to be true. Let's see if this body is interesting. The attendant pushed open the door and called up the doctor, saying that I was sick in the head. The two of them looked at the scene in front of them with a confused look on their faces. Is this still our young master? How can you be as enchanting as a girl? The two of them stuttered and couldn't speak. Fujio sat by the window of the hospital, recalling what this body had experienced. The attendant brought two of my favorite clothes and asked Fujio which one he wanted to wear. Looking at the manly clothes, it's amazing that this body really thinks of itself as a boy. He's going to make changes, starting with his clothes. I didn't expect Fujio's current behavior to make the attendant afraid to look at him directly. Better to keep a low profile. He ordered his entourage to bring out his favorite clothes. The attendant scrambled to produce a gaudy short-sleeved. I guess I really thought of myself as a pure man before. The attendant looked straight at me as I loosened my clothes. Is this still my young master? I didn't want to draw too much attention to myself yet, so I decided to wear my school uniform. The attendant froze in his tracks. I thought the young master didn't wear a school uniform. The next day, I came to school. The teacher looked at me strangely. Why did you leave the hospital so early? I'm surprised that I've caused the girls in the other classes to talk about me. I thought I heard them say I looked familiar. The bell rang and I entered the class. A bunch of my classmates are staring at me in disbelief. It's just a change of clothes. They didn't look at me like that before. Pop. A bench was kicked behind me. It turned out to be Jiang Feiyang from the class, the boy this body had once chased after. I'm not going to be a coward now. If you don't want to die, stay away. These words directly angered Jiang Feiyang. I won't let you bully me again. I didn't want to fight you, Chang. I hope we can get along well in the future. Would you agree with me? The surrounding students looked at the scene in front of them with disbelief. Fujio was finished. During lunch, a group of people were talking about Fujio's disgusting behavior. How dare you even like young Qin? I'm afraid you don't want to live. The three arrogant girls called out to Fujio, ready to teach him a lesson. Two girls came forward ready to strike and were verbally abusive, told me to go back where I came from and mockingly poured water on my head. Furious, Fujio doesn't hesitate to return the favor, kicked the lead blonde girl in the face. Even when he was on the ground, he continued to insult Fujio. Fujio calmly picked up the water bottle and poured it on the girl's head by the skin of her teeth. The girl, who had never been so insulted, howled for him to wait for Qin Xiao's revenge. Fujio looked at the girls with a strange expression. Qin Xiao, such a man, come to AI hit A. The blonde woman looked at the man in front of her with disbelief. Hadn't he always liked Qin Xiao? A classmate asked Fujio in surprise. Haven't you always liked Qin Xiao? At that moment, the blonde man standing in the distance followed suit. Young Master Qin, Fujio seems to have fallen out of love with you. How do you feel now? Qin Xiao couldn't say anything. He couldn't wait for Fujio to dislike himself. The attendant ran to Fujio in a panic, worriedly asking if he had been bullied. But Fujio's line about having already beaten the others made the follower incredulous. I turned my head and asked my attendant how obsessed I was with young Qin before. That memory really doesn't bear thinking about when it comes out of the entourage's mouth again. No amount of sophistry seems to change the way people see me. The attendant once again told Fujio that even if he liked boys, he should never like Qin Xiao. Because this has angered Fujio's rich father, he has cut off all of Fujio's pocket money. That's not the most important thing. His father's company is ready to be given to his siblings. Recall that the siblings in this body have always competed for favor in front of their father. My father was good to himself before, because I was his first child. But when he found out I was gay, my father's attitude changed. Not only did he cut off my finances, but he also started to be cold to my mother. When my father started his business, it was my mother who took the money. Fujio was secretly determined to get back everything that belonged to him. Sitting in the car, Fujio thought for a long time and decided to start with making money first. This made the driver and his entourage look at Fujio incredulously. Fujio secretly thought, the memory of two lives. Making money is not quite so simple. Since there's no more financial resources, it makes sense to find something to do. The driver was moved to tears, thinking that if Madam knew, she would be very relieved. But the duo suddenly realized that Fujio was looking for an excuse to take a leave of absence. Back at the place where he lived, Fujio turned on his computer. I'm going to start with the game first. After all, I was a master hacker in my last life. It's easy to make money from this. In no time, Fujio cleared the most difficult game. At this time, in Qin Xiao's studio, several people looked at the computer screen in surprise. This was a newcomer. The follower kept telling Qin Xiao about what had just happened and decided to pull this person in. Although you are a newcomer, this person's skills are not simple. Qin Xiao was also shocked by this person and decided to private message with this person. As expected, Fujio received an invitation letter from the computer. Without even thinking about it, Fujio directly declined the invitation. The follower was frozen in place. He had turned down an offer from a professional player. Immediately after, Qin Xiao logged into his account and appeared in the game. The henchman said to himself, I don't believe you're still disagreeing with Qin Xiao's appearance. Sure enough, Fujio received an invitation from the great god. Impatiently, he saw that there were still people pulling the strings and clicked no again. This operation directly angered Qin Xiao, as this person cannot even look at the big gods. You've made yourself known, and you're still talking shit about yourself. How much strength is this man hiding? Qin told his followers to wait for him to come online and check the person's IP address. It seems that this operation has completely angered young Qin. Fujio smiled and looked at the money earned from today's brush game, a total of 1866. Decided to upgrade his computer equipment first, but that's only enough to replace the keyboard with a preferred one. Thinking about it, it feels like life will be more interesting back there. The next day the attendant told Fujio that the reason for playing the game was to chase after Qin. With Fujio's level, even if he practices for another 10 years, he may not be able to make money. Listening to the entourage's nagging words made Fujio unable to bear it anymore. But then the attendant said, if you come first in the exams, madam will give you a big red packet. Fujio carelessly asked his attendant what place he took last time. But the answer was, number 1, as long as she can rise to the penultimate, madam will give Fujio a reward. This instantly caused Fujio to have an emotional breakdown. Is this what is expected of me? The students around us saw it and talked about it, as if they had changed. Not only have you become more handsome, but your temperament has also improved a lot. Fujio politely turned back. You guys are pretty too. This casual remark instantly made a group of girls shy away. Even the boys who used to love to bully themselves are wondering, how did this weak boy suddenly become so strong? In the classroom, Fujio quietly took out his tablet and prepared to make money. This scene was just seen by Jiang Feiyang. Before he could say anything, Fujio told the teacher that Chang wasn't taking the lesson seriously. As a result, he was punished for standing, and Fujio watched him leave with a smile on his face. I accidentally slipped and pressed the tablet, and agreed to Qin's invitation. That's when he realized that someone was trying to track him down. In that case, a plan was born in Fujio's mind. Then let's get started. It's a showdown between two hackers at the top of their game. One's a student, one's a professional. Inside Qin Xiao's studio, two of his followers are cursing in anger. I didn't realize that as a strong hacker I'd lost to a newbie. Even Qin Xiao felt incredible when he stopped. The opponents are so powerful that they leave no trace, and the fat man is a pro. The proud follower thinks that anyone else would have no chance at all. It was only then that they realized that their computers had been infected with a virus. Colleague's hard punch woke up the still cocky fat man. Calmly, Qin Xiao asked Fatty what he had learnt. Luckily, I was able to locate the other guy. He's inside the school. Fujio was bored and wandered around the restaurant. It's hard to imagine a hidden cyber master hiding in a school. At that moment, the radio suddenly blared out that Mr. Qin was coming to inspect the school. A group of schoolgirls couldn't help themselves and squealed with delight. Soon, Qin Xiao's two limousines stopped at the school entrance. A group of girls surrounded the door. Even the school director couldn't stop them. This makes Fujio can't help but feel that the role may not be too big either. The blonde sees such a great opportunity and decides to retaliate right then and there. Signal your partner to start planning. Fujio doesn't know that a crisis is coming. Suddenly, a hand pushed hard behind his back. Fujio stumbled and rushed out of the crowd. He fell right next to Qin Xiao. The two of them looked at each other, and many thoughts flashed through them in an instant. This scene has alerted Qin's security guards. Fujio's follower also wanted to pull him back without tears, but the scene seemed to be frozen in place, and neither of them knew how to say anything. The surrounding group of girls gnashed their teeth and looked at Fujio. Fujio, on the other hand, looked around, admiring the envious and jealous expressions. Since it's already like this, Fujio decided to flirt a bit, because Qin's face is truly unmatched. The scene even stunned the surrounding onlookers. Qin Xiao grabbed Fujio's hand and said in fear, "Are you Fujio? Be careful not to break your arm next time. The force is too much for even Fujio to bear." Looking at Qin Xiao's back, Fujio felt that he was really hard on him. Qin Xiao even left without looking back, not wanting to stay with him at all. Knowing the gap between their identities, Fujio was silent for a long time. The attendant greeted Fujio in a panic. If this nonsense continues, the position of follower will be lost. But Fujio's words made the attendant directly collapse. He was going to sleep with Qin Xiao. It's a good thing it was just a joke, or else we'd have no good results if we pissed off the big fam. The attendant could only beg Fujio to go back to class. Fujio had a flash of insight and decided to first find out who had just pushed him. On the top floor of the school building, Fujio started his high-tech technology. After some manipulation, the camera was successfully cracked. He's finally found the man who did it. It's just as I suspected. Was Siyu, the girl who confronted him the other day. Now that I know, a plan for revenge is secretly rising in my mind. Suddenly, the tablet was hacked. If I'm not mistaken, it should be Qin Xiao. Fatty hurriedly informed the location of the tablet. It's on the roof of the school building, and it was discovered that the campus surveillance had been. It's right here. Qin Xiao instantly became serious. Quickly run towards the target. We must find each other this time. The group rushed to the roof with disappointing results. The roof of the building was found to be empty. Was the information locked in incorrectly? The fat man affirmed that there was no mistake that this was the place. But my companion thinks the fat man has been tricked again. Just then, Qin Xiao heard the ringing of electronic equipment. The bodyguard followed the direction and found it. But the results were disappointing. It's a tablet the hacker left behind. Fatty began to lament that this hacker was so cunning that he couldn't find a single trace of it. And tablets run 5 times slower than computers. If this person used a computer, it would be an even more terrifying existence. Qin Xiao was also puzzled as to why such a powerful person had never been heard of before. Fujio sighed his dancing happily, lost the flatbed, but played them like a fiddle. You have to earn money to buy a computer to make better use of your skills. Suddenly, Fujio heard the radio shouting his name. In the director's office, Fujio saw someone very familiar, his own father and half-sister. The head instructor saw his chance and went straight to telling all about his homosexuality, especially with the contact we just had with Qin Xiao. The father was furious when he heard this and cursed angrily at his son. And this sister is helping Fujio in order to show herself. But the father was very direct and severed the parent-child relationship with Fujio. There will be no more contact between them. Fujio could only agree helplessly, and that's not all. The father made another suggestion to the teacher. Whether it's expulsion or dismissal, the school can handle it at its own discretion. He returned to his class forlornly. Listening to his classmates whispering about him has discouraged. There's no choice but to listen. Fujio quickly picked up his school bag, straight out of the class, which was quiet as a pin drop. Just as I reached the door, I ran into an unexpected visitor. It's the 3 of them again. With mocking language they started to attack Fujio. Fujio just glanced at them. A smile gradually escaped from the corners of his mouth. It scared the 3 girls so much they couldn't breathe. Fujio has nothing to fear at this time, just a little nudge, and she was overwhelmed. Looking at Fujio's back, the blonde woman froze in place. The 3 girls were wondering why Fujio had changed so much. After reacting, he immediately started roaring at Fujio. Fujio ignored the shrews and prepared to leave the campus. At that moment, a figure appeared next to Fujio, rubbing shoulders with Fujio. The strange woman whispered, cheering, making Fujio for a moment. Fujio, who heard the voice, immediately turned his head, standing at a loss. Who the hell is this girl? I can't believe Fujio's studies ended so early. Sitting in the car, he's been looking through his mobile phone, repeatedly watching the video of the blonde woman laying hands on herself. The driver also looked helpless and told Fujio that his mother had rushed back for the matter. The attendant also kept telling Fujio, hoping that he wouldn't argue with his mother anymore. Fujio said he knew what to do. The attendant looked at the young master with both surprise and amazement. In fact, Fujio had already thought of a countermeasure in his heart. Before I entered, I heard my mother talking to the head of the school. This is pleading for his son to see if there's another chance to go to school. Even if it costs a bit of money, a bit of connections, as long as I can go to school. The mother has been talking about her pain, but the tone of voice on the other end of the phone made Fujio furious. Fujio called out to her mother, not wanting to let her speak so humbly anymore. As soon as he grabbed the phone, he disliked it back viciously. The opposite side is saying that if you want to stay in school, you have to show it. Fujio, who was already reluctant to go back to school, how could he be let off so easily? This kind of blackmailing of parents is something that can be done at any time to get him out of This statement directly angered the other party, claiming that even if they had the money, my mother rushed over to dissuade me, but it was too late. It's the last chance, there's no school now. Fujio directly hugged his mother without saying a word. I don't want to make my mother bow down for me again. I won't go back to the school. The mother was so moved that she was stumped. When I think back to when I was a rebellious child, it's like a different person when I compare it. Once Fujio's father deserted him and the child wailed on the sidelines. Fujio's change made it hard for her mother to accept for a while. Thinking back to a time when I used to eat with my mouth full, it made Fujio very annoyed. He just flipped the table over and kept fighting against himself. The mother was in tears, feeling that her child had really grown up this time. Fujio also tenderly told his mother that he would live well with her in the future. But my mother was still uneasy. If I don't go to school now, what will I do in the future? Fujio, on the other hand, told his mother with a calm face that he would solve this matter himself. The city was lit up at night and Fujio began his new round of plans. Though he did not know what to do, the attendant kept close behind him. Fujio stopped in his tracks. The attendant then realized what the young master had in mind. Fujio told his entourage that this isn't for fun, it's for business. After talking for half a day, Fujio brought his entourage to the internet cafe. Before he could sit down, his attendant was ordered to buy lollipops. Stretching his muscles, Fujio began his action. It's going to be a sleepless night. The whole city's not going to have a good time. Fujio needs a night out this time. Big time. Fujio's fingers tapped rapidly on the keyboard. In no time, the entire network in the internet cafe was invaded by Fujio. A group of people were in a hurry to find the administrator, and it was an instant mess. Some of the people who were playing the game yelled angrily that their good gear was gone. The network HQ's phones are ringing off the hook, and still no solution. Some of the bosses who were having meetings were in a hurry. Maintenance workers sort out the problem little by little. At this time, the entire city's network has been invaded by Fujio. This is just to find a very important information. Soon, Fujio happily ended this invasion trip because he's got what he wants. These are the kinds of data that allow a person to experience what it means to suffer. It's 11 o'clock at night. In one of the tallest buildings in the city, Xin Xiao has been waiting for that expert to come online. Even though the henchman is sleepy, Xin Xiao is still waiting. I didn't expect that expert to actually agree to young Qin's invitation. The follower was even more excited, saying that he could finally go to sleep. But a cry of alarm from the fat man next to him made the follower instantly raise his spirits. Because he found this master. This expert is the one who just disconnected the network. Xin Xiao also said that the situation just now was indeed a hacker's so-called. Fatty jumped straight to a conclusion. Tens of thousands of computers, all being operated by one person again. The follower looked at the fat man with disbelief. Still can also do it. Fatty swore that he could do this. Not more than 3 people in the country. This directly put Xin Xiao in deep thought. Xin Xiao inquired, where is this person? But Fatty is no match for him. He can't find out at all. Catching the fat man in the act, the followers kept on taunting him. Xin Xiao was once again in deep thought, feeling that this matter was not that simple. Xin Xiao guessed that that expert should be cracking something. No matter what, Xin Xiao will find him out. Fatty received orders and vowed to find this man. Just then, that master came online in the game. What the hell is this guy doing throwing himself into the net? The 3 looked incredulously at the message sent by the other. Is young Qin taking the trouble to find me? Is he secretly in love with me? For a while, Xin Xiao couldn't say a word in embarrassment. Fujio, who was hiding in the dark, smiled heartily. He continued to taunt Xin Xiao with his words. The 2 of them snickered as they looked at the computer, surprisingly allowing Qin to seduce them. Xin Xiao was completely enraged and scolded the 2 of them not to eat meat this month. The 2 eaters hugged and cried with regret. Xin Xiao started to respond to the other party with a serious face. Whoever you are, you better pray from now on that I don't find you. In the internet cafe, Fujio laughed loudly, causing a group of people around him to be puzzled. Lustful thought. Even if you don't come to me, I'll come to you. After playing, Fujio started to do his business, becoming unusually serious with the rapid keystrokes of a mobile phone. Fujio heard some childish noises. This is the indecent voice of the school director at Foxy's mother's house. She slept with the school director for the sake of her children's education. This evidence is enough to make the 2 of them look bad. Not only video, but also audio dialogue. We even found the school director's account with other parents. Today's collection was a surprise to Fujio. Suddenly, Fujio saw the video of MissY. We're in for a real treat this time. What would the video be about? Fujio immediately clicked on start playing. I used to be treated like a faggot by my classmates. Now he's the school's favorite. The attendant is shouting behind me to wait. You're driving me to school. To lighten the burden on the family, he simply refused and skated to school. This directly shocked the butler and the attendant, leaving the two of them in the wind. Skateboard. In uniform. I'm so cool eating chocolate lollipops. Soon came the school, weaving in and out of the crowd. Steps ahead. A show-off. Skateboarding up in the air. It landed firmly in the hand. Awesome. A sound of praise came to mind. I turned my head handsomely, instantly captured a bunch of little fans. The vibration of my mobile phone called me back. So that's why Chin wanted to propose a meeting with him. I was helpless, but I didn't know the boss would take the bait as soon as he caught it. Boss is boss. He gave me his contact details. You're really looking up to me, aren't you? I replied to him that it was annoying to be chased all the time, and it just made him speechless. I'm so happy to have made Bully lose his shit. Cool as I was about to go to class when I was stopped by a voice behind me. It's the girl who was falsely accused of being a thief yesterday. In return, she brought me a bun steamed by her mother, next to the classmates, but said she was fat like a pig. The words made her blush with shame. I looked at the controversy of the students next to me. I reached out and picked up a bun made by my schoolmate's mother, eating this breakfast of love under the watchful eyes of a crowd of fangirls. This action is to win the fans' love. This time the schoolboy sat solidly. The bell rang and everyone rushed back to the classroom. Like a full grade I worshipped in physics class. This shortcut couldn't be touched. It seems that I have no connection with physics. It's just a book of God. Since you don't understand, play with your mobile phone for a while. I remembered that I hadn't arranged a meeting time with our boss yet, so I hurried to ask. He told me that this afternoon. I asked him if he was a bully who was all about words, and the whole thing was speechless. The physics teacher was still at the podium, talking with great vigor about the knowledge. I told him to meet me at 6 p.m. at Cafe A. I'll see you there. I just wanted to switch off my mobile phone, but Qin Xiao said to wait, arousing my curiosity. It was a normal chat, only to see a line flash up on the screen. He asked me if I was a man or a woman, which made me want to flirt with him, ask him what's wrong. He's not interested in boys too. He said he wasn't interested after a moment of speechlessness, which made me giggle. Lying on the table, he snickered, causing his tablemates to dislike him for a while. The teacher is still in the middle of his lecture. On the other side, inside the Qin group, Qin Xiao was having a small meeting with his followers. Qin Xiao stared at his mobile phone with a tired face. The little followers are whispering. They heard that boss and the others answered messages and fell asleep. At that moment the door was opened. The assistant brought the iron clothes for Mr. Qin. Qin Xiao stood up straight away when he heard. So the boss didn't come home all night. Can't it be that there is an important person to meet? I only saw Qin Xiao faintly say Z of Spades asked him to meet him. The little followers immediately asked, who? The henchman said he wouldn't let young Qin go and said I was too cunning. 63. Fatty said he couldn't let me run away this time, and he wanted to bring in more people. Qin Xiao's chest said he would not be able to feel whether it was a trap or not. Qin Xiao looked contemptuous and said if he was reminding him about being fooled by me. The little followers shook their heads like dice, and the boss smiled happily. Qin Xiao seems to be stable, but he's really panicking inside. Get on your mobile and tell the security team to get some extra bodyguards. That got a glare from the boys. Afternoon school is a world of sleepyheads. The sound of the teacher's lecture was the best lullaby. Only to see the table yawn continuously. I won't be lazy. I'll study hard. As the table watched helplessly, the accident was about to happen. Yes, that's right. I was called up by the teacher to answer a question. It's like winning the jackpot. The teacher asked a question. This brought out the spirit of the table, which had been drowsy. But in this world, we can't help each other. So it was the bun girl who told me the answer morning. I smiled slightly, but I always have memories of 2 lifetimes. As soon as I opened my mouth, I answered the teacher's questions in fluent English. I shocked the teacher with my brilliant answer. And, of course, there's the table who wants to see me make a fool of myself. I've captured all the girls in my class. The teacher looked at me me and smiled approvingly too. Look at me being so cool and speaking fluent English. The Bun girls behind me are all admiring me. My English teacher even applauded me excitedly. Soon it'll be time for class to end. I finally made it to the end of class and looked at the unread messages on my phone. So our boss isn't a man of few words, but Sheen changed the appointment to the school gate. Well, it's not like I'm gonna be riding in Mr. Big's car in front of everyone. It's not like I'm the enemy of the school. At this time, at the entrance of the school, Sheen Xiao's car is openly parked there, but it's also attracted countless fangirls. However, it seems that Sheen Xiao inside the car can't show any interest. As the mobile phone beeps, Sheen Xiao opens his eyes and says, "I'm on my way." The henchman said, "I'm not a big man, am I?" Fatty said he'd like to see what I look like. Then the two of them started whispering. At the moment, Mr. Bully is waiting with a calm face. Instead, the duo said they didn't know what the president thought and asked to meet offline. The security guards outside the car are always on guard, looking in every direction. The two of them really couldn't help but look behind them towards the boss. Sheen Xiao was looking out the window. Sheen Xiao looked at the fangirls outside the window with an expressionless face. It seems that the person calling out of the window is not him. I'm heading towards the school gates with my skateboard. The little attendant was sweating so much he wouldn't let me go to the school gates. I let him up with a look of disdain. He burst into tears and hugged me and said he was afraid I was being a nymphomaniac. What if I get kicked out of school? I smiled slightly and said I knew he was waiting for someone too. So is there a possibility that it's me? Female high school student posts video of her school's head instructor's extramarital desires. Is it really possible to oust a school director? The next morning on the campus of the first middle school in Jiangshi, the moody headmaster walked into the school humming a little song. The head teacher vaguely sensed that his classmates were casting strange glances at him. The headmaster suddenly looked back but didn't see anything. I was just trying to arrange for a teacher to control my students. Just walked in and saw the teacher looking at something on the computer screen. The director also walked in to check the computer, but when he saw the computer in front of him, this scene made the head teacher's old face red and wide-eyed. The headmaster even slapped the table and said it was a slur. It was a slur against him. Also in the news, the head teacher of a major high school has become a slave to money. There are people on the street who say this, who thought the director of the provincial key was like. Of course parents went to the school angry not to let the director teach here. There's talk amongst the students that a lot of the people who were expelled are coming back. That's when my mom got the call. My mom was so excited that she asked if I didn't have to leave school. The city's education department held a press conference with the first high school in Gangsai. At this time, some of my classmates and I are standing on the stage. There's also a large number of journalists. The headmaster on stage apologized to us bullied students. I said, provocatively, that his voice was as small as an ant's and that the reporters couldn't hear. The headmaster was furious and said that we should have been expelled earlier. Suddenly, a girl rushed out and said that the headmaster had wronged her for being money-minded. Her mother broke her legs and got sick trying to get the school to drop the penalty. The high school girl was crying uncontrollably. Then the headmaster rushed to reassure that Zhang is deeply reviewed. Don't be too excited. But I said, why did I hear that the school wants to recommend Zhang to teach elsewhere? At that moment the reporters on the stage were like exploding pots asking, is this true? The headmaster hastened to explain that the Education Bureau would absolutely not tolerate. It is Zhang was in the pull away. Still do not forget to turn back. Express defiance. I'm just looking at him like this, but it's really self-inflicted. Reporters don't give up on good stories like this and keep asking all sorts of questions. Suddenly the reporter asked us if we were afraid of reprisals, so we didn't dare to ask for help. I reached for the reporter's microphone. I said calmly, because we all believe that justice is late but never absent. The TV is showing the incident just now. Fatty couldn't stop himself from crying. Sheen Xiao was a bit confused and asked him what he was crying about. Fatty complained that he was dissuaded by the school in the same way. Sheen Xiao sighed silently. Then he turned to his follower and asked him if he'd been dissuaded in the same way. The follower said he was touched and could never allow this bad director to wreak havoc on others. Looking at the news on the TV in front of him, Sheen Xiao said someone would make a move. Fatty and his followers asked who else has the right to do that in Jiangshi. Sheen Xiao replied with a look of certainty, Z of spades. The two of them are not too stupid, always guessed it. Sheen Xiao transported a smile and directly acquiesced to the, and that the 6 students interviewed must have the Z of spades. When we get home, the air is so refreshing when you think of what happened at school today. When I got to the stairs, I saw my mother on the phone. She's hiding something from me. I just went to my mother's side and she hung up the phone. My mother said she'd made me my favorite pig's feet and told me to hurry up and eat them. I said yes to my mother, who said it wouldn't be good if I didn't eat it cold. But the phone was buzzing. The mother lifted the phone up to look at it and froze straight away, as if she was torn between. I put my hand on my mother's shoulder. "Tell Mom to pick it up, it's okay. I was there for her, no matter what." The mother got on the phone and said she never treated them badly. "The gaming competition is about to start," they said no when asked me for money. It's like feeding a dog's conscience. But the caller said my mother had a bad attitude, thanks to Sister Ching, and that my father didn't open his eyes to my fat mother. The mother slammed the phone to pieces in anger. I comforted my mother, who was trembling with anger. Mom quickly adjusted her mood and said she was going to serve me a bowl of pig's trotters. I asked my mother if something was wrong with the company. Mother says it'll pass, it's not a big deal. I turned to the door and said, "The one outside the door is listening, isn't he? Come on, tell me." The attendant cautiously poked his head through the door. Said this gaming is a profession that pays a lot of dividends in the National Pro League. Sheen's group funded the entire Zhang's professional battle team. Every year, we take the top players from our companies and run a competition. Agencies can extract significant transfer fees for players who are good-looking and play well. Said Mother's company is like that, so it's not easy to pack and train for a year. As a result, agents poached all the top players, leaving only mediocre. The partners are pulling out, saying Mother's firm is failing. I comforted my mother sadly. But my mother said I shouldn't listen to him, and that she'd make sure I ate and drank well. I said to my mother that I should be the one to make her drink and eat, and she said the opposite. "It's just a game, I can do it." Mother poofed out a laugh. Said the electric competition as I play the Plants vs. Zombies. The duo even laughed out of tears. My mother told me to eat first, but I hadn't talked to her yet. Mother said she had to go to Wyoming later. My mother told me to eat well and not to clean up. She'd do it. I just ran up to the first floor to ask my mother where the list of e-campaigners is. My mother told me it was on the bookcase and to get it myself. Got it. I stood in front of the bookcase and studied it carefully. It was immediately clear that the original with this. Sheen's group the next day. Crowds are meeting in conference rooms to discuss modern consumerism. With a computer beep, Sheen Xiao skimmed the. It's the Z of spades. Sheen Xiao was instantly refreshed. Even the people in the conference room don't know what's going on. But Sheen Xiao suddenly stood up. Walked straight out, leaving behind the dismayed staff and the slamming of the door. At that moment a computer beep sounded in the room. I'm sitting intently at my computer. Send a message to Sheen Xiao and ask him if he's been looking hard for me these 2 days. Sheen Xiao said no with his own mouth, making me laugh with joy. I was instantly shocked by what followed. How did he know that I like chocolate-flavored candies? I craned my head towards the door in horror. Come on, is it really that bad? It's hard to tell if I've been exposed or if he's trying to scam me. No, he's just trying to bluff me. He doesn't know who I am. But I did come up with an idea. Why don't we ask him to meet us? I guessed with anticipation whether he would refuse or accept it. And so time slips away. I'm still waiting for him to write back. I told you, it's not possible. It's time to move my body when I've been doing this for so long. And when I stood up, just as I turned to leave, a computer beep froze me in my tracks. I hurriedly turned to look back. The computer screen showed the word good. I used to be treated like a faggot by my classmates. Now he's the school's favorite. The attendant is shouting behind me to wait. You're driving me to school. To lighten the burden on the family, he simply refused and skated to school. This directly shocked the butler and the attendant, leaving the two of them in the wind. Skateboard. In uniform. I'm so cool eating chocolate lollipops. Soon came the school, weaving in and out of the crowd. Steps ahead, a show-off, skateboarding up in the air, it landed firmly in the hand. Awesome. A sound of praise came to mind. I turned my head handsomely, instantly captured a bunch of little fans. The vibration of my mobile phone called me back, so that's why Sheen wanted to propose a meeting with him. I was helpless, but I didn't know the boss would take the bait as soon as he caught it. Boss is boss. He gave me his contact details. You're really looking up to me, aren't you? I replied to him that it was annoying to be chased all the time, and it just made him speechless. I'm so happy to have made Bully lose his shit. Cool as I was about to go to class when I was stopped by a voice behind me. It's the girl who was falsely accused of being a thief yesterday. In return, she brought me a bun steamed by her mother, next to the classmates, but said she was fat like a pig. The words made her blush with shame. I looked at the controversy of the the students next to me. I reached out and picked up a bun made by my schoolmate's mother, eating this breakfast of love under the watchful eyes of a crowd of fangirls. This action is to win the fans' love. This time the schoolboy sat solidly. The bell rang and everyone rushed back to the classroom. Like a full grade I worshipped in physics class. This shortcut couldn't be touched. It seems that I have no connection with physics. It's just a book of God. Since you don't understand, play with your mobile phone for a while. I remembered that I hadn't arranged a meeting time with our boss yet, so I hurried to ask. He told me that this afternoon. I asked him if he was a bully who was all about words, and the whole thing was speechless. The physics teacher was still at the podium, talking with great vigor about the knowledge. I told him to meet me at 6 p.m. at Cafe A. I'll see you there. I just wanted to switch off my mobile phone, but Qin Xiao said to wait, arousing my curiosity. It was a normal chat, only to see a line flash up on the screen. He asked me if I was a man or a woman, which made me want to flirt with him, ask him what's wrong. He's not interested in boys too. He said he wasn't interested after a moment of speechlessness, which made me giggle. Lying on the table, he snickered, causing his tablemates to dislike him for a while. The teacher is still in the middle of his lecture. On the other side, inside the Qin group, Qin Xiao was having a small meeting with his followers. Qin Xiao stared at his mobile phone with a tired face. The little followers are whispering. They heard that boss and the others answered messages and fell asleep. At that moment the door was opened. The assistant brought the iron clothes for Mr. Qin. Qin Xiao stood up straight away when he heard. So the boss didn't come home all night. Can't it be that there is an important person to meet? I only saw Qin Xiao faintly say Z of Spades asked him to meet him. The little followers immediately asked, who? The henchman said he wouldn't let young Qin go and said I was too cunning. 63. Fatty said he couldn't let me run away this time, and he wanted to bring in more people. Qin Xiao's chest said he would not be able to feel whether it was a trap or not. Qin Xiao looked contemptuous and said if he was reminding him about being fooled by me. The little followers shook their heads like dice, and the boss smiled happily. Qin Xiao seems to be stable, but he's really panicking inside. Get on your mobile and tell the security team to get some extra bodyguards. That got a glare from the boys. Afternoon school is a world of sleepyheads. The sound of the teacher's lecture was the best lullaby. Only to see the table yawn continuously. I won't be lazy. I'll study hard. As the table watched helplessly, the accident was about to happen. Yes, that's right. I was called up by the teacher to answer a question. It's like winning the jackpot. The teacher asked a question. This brought out the spirit of the table, which had been drowsy. But in this world, we can't help each other. So it was the bun girl who told me the answer morning. I smiled slightly, but I always have memories of 2 lifetimes. As soon as I opened my mouth, I answered the teacher's questions in fluent English. I shocked the teacher with my brilliant answer. And, of course, there's the table who wants to see me make a fool of myself. I've captured all the girls in my class. The teacher looked at me and smiled approvingly too. Look at me being so cool and speaking fluent English. The bun girls behind me are all admiring me. My English teacher even applauded me excitedly. Soon it'll be time for class to end. I finally made it to the end of class and looked at the unread messages on my phone. So our boss isn't a man of few words. But Qin changed the appointment to the school gate. Well, it's not like I'm gonna be riding in Mr. Big's car in front of everyone. It's not like I'm the enemy of the school. At this time, at the entrance of the school, Qin Xiao's car is openly parked there, but it's also attracted countless fangirls. However, it seems that Qin Xiao inside the car can't show any interest. As the mobile phone beeps, Qin Xiao opens his eyes and says I'm on my way. The henchman said I'm not a big man, am I? Fatty said he'd like to see what I look like. Then the two of them started whispering. At the moment, Mr. Bully is waiting with a calm face. Instead, the duo said they didn't know what the president thought and asked to meet offline. The security guards outside the car are always on guard, looking in every direction. The two of them really couldn't help but look behind them towards the boss. Qin Xiao was looking out the window. Qin Xiao looked at the fangirls outside the window with an expressionless face. It seems that the person calling out of the window is not him. I'm heading towards the school gates with my skateboard. The little attendant was sweating so much he wouldn't let me go to the school gates. I let him up with a look of disdain. He burst into tears and hugged me and said he was afraid I was being a nymphomaniac. What if I get kicked out of school? I smiled slightly and said I knew he was waiting for someone too. So is there a possibility that it's me? Overlord Qin Xiao's first appointment with offline netizens. Who knew that it was the same little faggot who was going to adopt him before? When he learned that it was me that Mr. Ba was waiting for, the little attendant froze in dismay. I took a big step and walked to Qin Xiao's car and said, "The president is waiting for me." The bodyguards, on the other hand, stopped me and said they had not received instructions. I smugly took my phone and sent a message to Bully to tell the bodyguard to get out of the way. When Qin Xiao heard me coming, he looked out for me. But when he sees me, I'm the Z of spades, straightened up and stared, which seems to have caused him a lot of shadows. "The boss is worthy of the boss," said to the bodyguard to let me in, with the impossibility of it being me written in the eyes of Fatty and the henchman. Under the gaze of the hostile eyes of the school's little fangirls, I walked straight past the puzzled bodyguards towards Qin Xiao's car, and Fatty said, "I've molested Mr. Bully, so he won't beat me up here." I just happened to walk up to the car window at the moment and heard this. Smilingly asked Qin Xiao, "Wanna hit who?" "Is it hit me?" This question is asked by the Qin Xiao directly muffled. Then the boss told me to get in the car, fearing the wrath of the fangirls. When I got in the car, Bully stayed away from me like a little whiny bitch. In order to ease the atmosphere, I came to a self-introduction. "My name is Fujio." The two were very shocked and said I am not the infamous thugs. Also said that guessing the Z of spades was the first thing that ruled me out, but I heard their whispers loud and clear. I playfully disappoint them by saying I didn't get to spoil them. Chief Bully was also very helpless as he listened to our quarrels. The little follower was about to rush over and fight me at that moment. Bully stops the comedy just in time. The little follower was also in tears and said the president harbored me, but the boss says he doesn't like men, especially men who want to adopt him. I had to hem and haw in embarrassment. He said he was indifferent when he was first friend, but he likes the boss. I mean, who hasn't been young and foolish? At this time, Fatty is not afraid to die and asked me if I do not like Qin Xiao now. Afterwards, Boss Ba shot a murderous gaze at Fatty. In the small fat constantly begged a little. The boss of the angry face is big, said driving. 3 stunning black cars sped away as my entourage looked on, leaving behind a bewildered entourage and disgruntled fangirls. At this moment, the attendant gradually realized that I had gone away in young Qin's car, fantasizing about the fear of me saying the wrong thing and being boiled in the pot by the overlord. He cried on his knees, regretted not stopping me, and was ashamed of his wifer. After crying for a while and reacting, "You should call me first to ask for my safety." At this point I'm sitting in my car picking up my vibrating mobile phone and looking at it. It turned out to be the entourage. I rushed after answering the call. The deafening voice of the entourage on the other side of the mobile phone asked me if I had been hurt where I was going, which drew stares from the little followers. I asked the arrogant young Qin where he was traveling to. Arrogant Qin Xiao Shuben won in but said, "Hey, to take me to dinner." Offline dating, online friends, what else can you do without dinner? I'm holding back my laughter thinking that's a really weird thing to say coming from Mr. Ba. So I told my attendant that I was going to dinner, but the attendant's head kept imagining me being made into a bun, and then shouted in horror until I couldn't go, so loud that it nearly blew me off my feet. I explained to him not to think of anything else. I'm not going to sleep with him. The instant the brakes were applied, I wonder how the driver feels now. Realizing I'd said the wrong thing, I held my mouth, and the whole car was silent. But the caller said that if Qin Xiao knew about it, I would die. I resentfully said I already knew and hung up the phone. I curry favor with the arrogant Bully and said, "This is a misunderstanding of Xiao Qin, brother." Suddenly Bully put his hand on my head, and I felt the Grim Reaper calling to me. I didn't realize that I was overthinking it, but Bully just turned my head back to the front, coldly said to me to keep my mouth shut or I won't be able to eat peacefully. I rubbed my innocent head and could never speak out of turn again. I didn't expect Qin Xiao to look at his own hand straight out of focus. Just now this hand feels soft and comfortable. There is a different kind of feeling. He actually felt that it felt like a cat. Soon arrived at the hotel. The road was uneventful. The bouncer was a gentleman and opened the door for me, and there it was, being shocked with his mouth wide open and speechless. Wow, this handsome man, this decoration is so magnificent that it shakes my eyes. The waiter in front of me guided Mr. Ba to the private room, and I walked at the end. The little henchman said he wanted to pack pineapple oil. And now I'm looking up, like a landlord's stupid son who has never been to the city, looking left and right. He then informed the kitchen that the boss had arrived and that he had to be given priority. After we were seated, Manager Lee introduced the restaurant's specialties to Mr. Ba. I was thinking, what if the food ordered by this boss is not to my taste? I didn't realize that Mr. Ba had thoughtfully told Manager Lee to ask me directly. Who knew that the moment Manager Lee saw that it was me, he had a bitter look on his face. The reason is because of the loud noise and playfulness of the previous meal here. Wasting food by not eating what they ordered, just because their family is a rich family. And once got drunk and sang in the hall and got dragged out. Looking at the expression on Manager Lee's face at this moment, I guess he hates me to the extreme. At this moment even the waiters outside the private room are talking about it. Not looking forward to probing and peeking at the scene inside the private room. Seeing such a sight then thought of a trick. I hemmed and hawed at Manager Lee. "Let's have the lobster from your shop." The bully's voice from the side asked me if I liked lobster, and I nodded my head. Who would have thought that Mr. Ba would order 10 cases of baked oolong and soup for me? Simply like a proper thug. Instantly stunned Manager Lee and them. I instantly remembered that the most powerful man in Jiangqing can't be messed with by thugs. Manager Lee smiled and asked me if there was any food that needed to be avoided. When I heard this call my face instantly lowered and said to Manager Lee, "This title is easily confused with the other Fu Xiao, and I don't like it." Manager Lee was afraid of saying the wrong thing and was careful about how to address me. I'm trying to figure out what to call me, and a unique name at that. While I was thinking about it, I came up with the idea of calling Master 9. No way. The next second I was being held down on the table by a bully right next to me. When I lifted my head was still spinning in a dizzying circle which hurt too much. Just wanted to retort when I saw a serious-looking boss next to me told me not to be too cocky. Then Qin Xiao turned his head to look at Manager Lee who was sweating coldly and said, "Should not need him Qin Xiao how to call Manager Lee's service guests it." These words made Manager Lee's crowd so frightened that they hurriedly called out to Master 9. Manager Lee went out and gave a hard time to the 3 people who were eating outside. The corners of my mouth rose with a smug look at Manager Lee's back as he left. Today is simply a great pleasure. The small follower on the side is also looking stunned. Whispered, "Never seen Qin Xiao favoring a person so much." The waiter quickly serves up 10 cases of baked Australian dragon in soup and other delicacies. Looking at the table filled with a hearty dinner, which was simply delicious. With a start, a few people even more open-stomached to eat. Who can resist the temptation to grab a chunk of lobster and shove it in your mouth? So while eating, I peeked at the boss next to me. Why didn't he eat anything? Being stared right at me like this by Qin Xiao, I was a bit flustered at once. This cold boss wouldn't be trying to prop me up with lobster, would he? I pushed the leftover scraps of food in front of me away from Qin Xiao's gaze. Covering his belly, he said to Qin Xiao that he had eaten too much. "I can take it home if I can't finish it." When I heard Qin Xiao's words, I rubbed my hands together happily to show that I had earned it. Then he asked the waiter to serve him 2 large lobsters and asked him to watch me finish them, but that's not at all how I remember packing. The fat man on the side directly spat out the water in his mouth when he heard this. "Mr. Qin told me to take my time. He wants me to have enough today." I looked at the waiter holding a lobster bigger than his hand. I sighed and said I had to go to the bathroom first. Qin Xiao also made me feel at ease and said that they would not move the lobster. The 2 men on the sidelines looked at me dumbfounded and almost fell to the ground. The henchman said to Mr. Qin that he was too nice to me. Qin Xiao told his follower to serve him if he wanted to, but to finish it. The henchman quickly said no. He and Fatty couldn't even finish it together, but the follower's heart still felt a bit strange, but he didn't know what was strange about it. The fat man eating noodles looks up, asked the young Qin, who stood up and intended to leave, where he was going. Qin Xiao said he wanted to see me who used the toilet to escape, and in the bathroom at that moment, I watched the water dripping in front of me from the sink, pondering how long it would take me to eat all that food. I was in a dilemma as to how I was going to get myself out of this. At that moment, the sound of footsteps on the side startled me in the middle of my thoughts. A waiter came up to me and asked if I needed help. "I'm surprised there's a waiter here." Then point to the dripping faucet, says the tap seems to be broken and won't come out. The waitress saw this and thought I was teasing her, but she continued to patiently explain to me that it involved putting my hand under the tap. She showed me how to do it as she talked. I gave a look like that and thanked the waiter. The waiter looked at me in front of him with a look of spring in his step. A pair of big hands grabbed me by the back of my collar. The waiter also exclaimed the identity of the person who arrested me. "Qin Xiao." I was lifted straight up by Qin Xiao and my feet left the ground. It's too much of a coincidence that he's coming to the bathroom too. Qin Xiao was speechless as he watched. Even my hair was swaying. Took me into the loo under the watchful eye of the waiter. He took me into the gents, took me into the toilet and then let me go. Qin Xiao asked me in a stern voice why I was standing outside. I countered that I was just flirting. Qin Xiao asked me what I was waiting for while walking towards the urinal. The hairs on my body stood on end, and I looked embarrassed. Qin Xiao, on the other hand, said that this is a regular program to meet netizens. I immediately said, where on earth do people meet online to have such a meeting program? In the back of my mind I thought I didn't have it. He looked at Qin Xiao and thought, we can't go on like this. Thinking of a way out, I walked quickly towards Qin Xiao. Hands were trembling slightly at the thought too. In the gaze of Qin Xiao with suspicion, I hugged the dumbfounded Qin Xiao. I said with affection that I wouldn't be modest if Mr. Qin was so kind. While saying that, he put his hand under Qin Xiao's trousers. On the surface, I'm very stable, but in reality, I've been in a mess for a long time. I went on to ask Qin Xiao if he was unsure of himself. Qin Xiao directly grabbed my hand, put my hands and my whole body against the wall. Qin Xiao's face was grim, obviously pissed off by me. Look at how angry you are. I went on to say that it's only a good relationship. Mr. Qin opened my hand. I was told not to talk to him in that tone of voice while I was grooming myself. Then he left, telling me to come back later. I thought to myself that the plan had worked, and I was finally free of this topic. And at that moment, that questioning whether we've both fallen into a hole, the follower casually responded, obviously not caring where we had been. Fatty was wondering if we had a fight, and at that, the follower's interest was, and that's when the door opened. The follower who was gesticulating didn't know that the door had been opened. When he saw Qin Xiao standing in front of them, his face directly turned black. Under young Qin's powerful and angry aura, the two explained that there were many girls chasing after Qin Xiao. Obviously, Qin was not so easy to fool, and directly asked the waiter to serve 10 dishes. The henchman is whimpering and eating in Auslan, but under Qin Xiao's powerful aura, the two were even more cold and sweaty. Qin Xiao's face was gloomy with a hint of anger. The two suspected that someone must have made young Qin angry. The two men on the sidelines asked Fujio if he was a Z of spades. After thinking about Fujio's bitchy appearance, I'm sure it's the Z of spades. Fatty questioned me about playing the game to get close to the president. The henchman signaled to Qin Xiao that he wouldn't be rejected if he started to add him. The two men then discussed with abandon as Qin Xiao looked on. Qin Xiao's gaze gradually became sharp. The two hadn't noticed the change in Qin Xiao, but continued their discussion. At that moment, I pushed my way in, apologized to them for keeping them waiting. In another period of time, I finally ate all the food in front of me. Qin Xiao called the waiter and asked him how much the total amount was. The two men on the sidelines had never seen Qin Xiao pay before and were talking about it. When I heard the waiter's offer, I spat out a mouthful of water in shock. I timidly asked the waiter to pass the invoice to Mr. Qin. Qin Xiao asked me with a smile on his face if I had this one in my internet meeting. I looked at Qin Xiao angrily, but I couldn't do anything about it. I reached for my wallet. Open it and say you only have $50. Qin Xiao's eyes looked at the rows of bank. I'll offer him a treat. I looked at Qin Xiao with praying hands. Seeing Qin's lack of willingness to respond, I decided to use my best move. I put my hand towards Qin Xiao. He pressed on his shoulder to seduce Qin Xiao with his body, but Mr. Qin has no interest in me as a man. Took my wallet right out of my hand. Take out the card and hand it to the waiter. I was so angry that my teeth were chattering, and my followers behind me were gloating. The waiter came up to me and said my card had a low balance. Qin Xiao said he'd put the bill on me. I don't want to go into debt while I'm still young, and ask him about the tips he posted on the. Qin Xiao said I wanted to owe him money. I was quick to say that I still owe the restaurant. Then Qin Xiao let us out of here. He turned around and asked me if he needed a lift. I put on a difficult expression and signaled that I had paid the restaurant all my money. Qin Xiao turned his head to look at me, seeing that the prawns in the bag are still going strong. Afraid that it would be inconvenient for me to carry it, he agreed to take me home. The car is traveling very fast. The car was in a state of embarrassment. Mr. Chin's henchman asked me if my mother's company was still viable. I gazed out the car window and casually asked what was meant by okay. I've heard that there aren't enough contestants. I'm afraid my mom won't be able to cope. Qin Xiao lapsed into silence, pondering something there. I think he said Mum's company would be fine. The follower listened to me in silence. Qin Xiao seems to be interested in this as well. I signify that what will fall, and what will not fall. In the course of chatting, we soon reached home. I signaled to them that I was home and was about to open the car door. I turned to thank him for taking me home. Mr. Chin asked me if I had anything else to say. I indicated that I would be hacking when I got home, and I messaged him. I gave him a yay sign that I was fine. Qin is pleased with my optimism. Then he kicked me out. I signaled to Mr. Qin that he could smile more because it's so cool to smile. I stroked Qin Xiao's head, signaling that I couldn't find a friend with a stern face. Then he ran away quickly and signaled to Qin Xiao that he was leaving. Qin Xiao's expression showed a kind of shyness. Then he coldly asked the two in front of him to drive. The mobile phone suddenly rings with a message. It's Fujio on his mobile phone inviting Qin Xiao home to play games. Qin Xiao let out a helpless sigh. Then he looked at his mobile phone with a smile on his face. Reach over and turn the music up. Vehicles traveling fast with music in the background. In the City of Lights, the two of them have become pleasant. Behind him, Qin Xiao looked out of the window with a smile on his face. Aside, I immediately took the lobster that I had passed in my hand. It dawned on him that Fujio wasn't looking for Qin Xiao for his family's business. Fatty explains, what if I'm acting? Qin Xiao, on the other hand, said I'm not acting. The sidekick says I still have a purpose. Qin Xiao exhaled a breath, to show both of them that they don't need to be too concerned about my intentions. The attendants looked at me with weeping relatives, as if they didn't believe I was back. He looked at me with a measured eye, fearing that I was missing an arm or a leg. I handed him a lobster. I explained to him that I'd wait for my mother's return to cook the lobster. He cried and said I'd grown up. When he saw me coming up the stairs, he asked me if I wanted to eat. I thought about what I'd just eaten and suggested that he get me some gastrointestinal tablets. When I got back to my room, I took a shower. I put on my pajamas and came straight out barefoot, seeing that the computer is sending out a message box. I'm rubbing my head and wondering what's going on. I opened the game and saw the large amount of gold and diamonds given to me by Qin Xiao. I was puzzled by the large number of gifts from Mr. Qin. Clicked on the message he sent. It said face-to-face gift. When I saw the gift he gave me, I thought, it's nice to have money. I asked him if he could send me a copy of the tutorial. I only accepted the diamonds from Mr. Qin. Tell him he doesn't want the money, he'll take the diamonds. On the other hand, Qin Xiao received the news. Asked me if I'm short of money. I replied that I was short of money, but that I would think I was making a love affair. Qin Xiao was at a loss for words. The message bar shows that Qin Xiao wants the diamonds back. I laughed so hard I slapped the table, holding a lollipop in his mouth. He then sent a message back to Qin Xiao. I offered him to take the order himself and work on the copy together. Soon in the copy of the Niku Bridge, I put on my headphones while sighing that the money givers are coming. As the crowd gathered around the crystal, a flash of light startled the bystanders. Soon Qin Xiao, dressed in luxurious clothes, came to the crowd. Upon seeing the ID of the visitor, I control the game character to greet Qin Xiao. The people around were discussing how Qin Xiao came back to play copies. The person in front of the game guessed that it was Qin Xiao. When I saw the ladder rankings, I was more sure that it was Qin Xiao's number. The monsters on the other side are charging towards us without knowing what's going on. He was directly knocked out by Qin Xiao's game character. Just as I turned around to warn the boss to watch his right side, seeing that the boss is already dead on the ground, I asked Mr. Chen how the boss died. Then just as Qin Xiao's character released his skills, my game character died straight away. I suspect that Qin has never been on a copy. At this moment, Qin Xiao was surrounded by corpses. Qin Xiao turned his head and said he doesn't play PvE. The other side of the fan club is discussing about Qin Xiao. Some people were surprised to see Qin Xiao in the copy. Qin Xiao's follower looked at the message in front of him and fell into silence. Rumor has it that Qin has a close relationship with a part-time worker. There's even an illustration to go with it. The follower then cried that it was some kind of publicity program. And in the conference room, Qin's assistant said that Qin doesn't make copies. Then after the man took out his mobile phone to show his assistant, the assistant rushed out and said he'd make a phone call. And in the other room, Qin Xiao picks up the ringing mobile phone. He said he's working on his copy. He'll talk to you tomorrow. The assistant, on the other hand, lapsed into silence on the hung-up mobile phone. The assistant was scratching his hair. Then there was a phone call. Have the guy on the other end of the line tell the publicist to write a long article. The assistant then argued with the person on the other end of the line, and explained the copy for Qin Xiao was cheated. And on the other side, Qin Xiao was leading us to brush the copies. This man told his assistant that he could take a picture with Qin Xiao. The company's people are lining up, too. The assistant then asked for the location of the Qin Xiao, and at this point in the game lobby, I'm marveling at the fact that the team next door is coming in. I'll send a message to Mr. Qin. Kudos to her for being so popular. While Qin Xiao was puzzled and said to call it a day. I'm calling the last order of the night. The highest bidder gets it. The crowd has raised the price, and Qin Xiao and I watched from the sidelines. I looked at the crowd in front of me at the auction. It's like auctioning off Mr. Qin's first night. This made Qin Xiao suddenly turn his head to look at me. And then there's the broken defense of Mr. Qin in front of the computer. Qin Xiao's teeth rattled in anger. I'm wide-eyed. It's as if Mr. Qin is threatening me to live a few more years. I quickly stated that I was only joking. Then, as Qin and I looked on expectantly, the final bidder is Mr. Qin's assistant and agent. The agent asked Qin to make a move. Qin Xiao's dark face indicated that she was offline now or calling her to get offline. Under the gaze of Qin Xiao, the agent was a little embarrassed. Qin Xiao then asked if the company was so idle that the economist had time to play games. Eventually, we teamed up together. I'm in the front of the room, listening to Mr. Qin's bullying speech. After Qin Xiao's condolences all the way, we finally reached the boss point. In the eyes of several people, a white gas gushed out. Then a red-haired hand with a weapon appeared. boss appeared in front of us. The aura is really strong. Qin Xiao and I attacked in silence. I commanded the mage not to output and to reply. Qin Xiao said he could be a meat shield, but obviously that wouldn't be enough output, so it didn't switch. I'm looking at the boss in front of me trying to think of a countermeasure. It's going to attack soon. I stepped on the ground and dodged its attack. Weapons fall to the ground and explode in a huge cloud of smoke. I guess as long as I don't get hit. Then I used my skills in the air. A shot to the boss's head. He shouted angrily, and I retreated. The agent is still exclaiming that my operation is awesome. Qin Xiao appeared behind me with a big sword in his hand. I immediately followed Qin's operation, and the agent on the sidelines is constantly exclaiming about the operation. I matched Qin Xiao's position, leaving numerous wounds on the boss. Qin Xiao and I then used our skills jointly in cooperation. Under the dullness of the economist, I'm going to kill the boss with Qin Xiao, defeat the boss in the end to win the game. I'm sure I'm a master of my trade. Immediately, I ordered the people around me to find out all about me. The secretary here asked if it was a picture of the number's owner. The economist said it's a photo of a real person. Of course. Then he thought of something and turned on his computer, sent a friend request, but what she didn't expect was to be rejected, and was so angry that she shouted. Then it goes on to show the requirements of the removed team. Looking at the computer, I marveled at the money I'd earned this night. I'm going to stop playing and go to bed. Qin Xiao sent a message at this time. I went up to check it out with a curious look on my face. Seeing that Mr. Chen and I want the money we earned tonight. I was very surprised by Qin's operation. Rapid typing ensues. It's not rare to offer money to Qin Xiao. Qin Xiao says he's a businessman. I agreed with a bitter smile. He went on to say that he's 9 and I'm 1. I'm really getting a big head after hearing this. I said it wouldn't look shameless. Qin Xiao then began to tell me the reason why the customer came. It's like 3 boulders weighing me down. He said with a satisfied face that it was a good split. I looked at the message in front of me. Finally, he took out his mobile phone with a reluctant look on his face, transferred the money to Qin Xiao. Look at the collection history on your phone. Qin Xiao nodded in satisfaction. Then there was a call from Mr. Qin's agent. The agent said she friended me and I didn't agree to it. Qin Xiao said he was pleased that the agent wanted to work overtime voluntarily. The agent immediately said on his mobile that he doesn't work overtime. She looked at Fujio's operation and thought it wasn't an ordinary person. And then there's the sentiment of pulling the strings. At this time I was completely unaware of the conspiracy between the two of them. Qin Xiao quickly sent me a message. I'm looking at the messages I'm getting. Steal the toothbrush from the cup. Send a voice message to Qin Xiao. Qin Xiao looked at the message in front of him. I'm going to send you a voiceover. I said I'll only add Qin's game friends. Hearing this, Qin Xiao was directly shocked. The secretary on the sidelines saw that her boss was angry again. After a period of silence, Qin Xiao explained to me that the person who added me was his agent. The message on my mobile phone is ticking. Qin Xiao said there's a back door. The secretary got close enough to take a peek. It was as if he had seen a new continent. Then Mr. Chen said he'd let me in. I looked at the message from Qin Xiao, putting the mobile phone to his mouth. He pondered for half a moment, finally agreed to Qin Xiao's request. Qin Xiao looks embarrassed when he sees this. The secretary on the sidelines was more than sure that it was a close relationship. The next day I went to the mall, planning on coming in for a better graphics card. Qin Xiao's game character appears on the screen. I turned my head and saw my game character and Qin Xiao's game character appear on the screen. The scene of the joint build-up, tour de force. It's a constant source of amazement in the neighborhood. I doubt knowing my status can video cards be cheaper. That's when I saw a familiar figure. It's such a coincidence to see what he looks like. This is the son of my father and his mistress, Fu Ximing. I listened to the bodyguard introduce him and make all sorts of offerings to him. Look at that face. I think of the way I was taunted before. I unwrapped the lollipop and put it in my mouth and sighed that the people are all here. The two of them noticed me at that moment. The bodyguard said there are flies here and he wants to take Fu Haiming somewhere else. Fu Haiming doesn't intend to leave here, said to buy it here. The people around us also said that Fu Haiming knows what he's doing. And then there were all kinds of words of worship. The bodyguard wanted me to make a scene, but at this point I'm in the process of buying a video card. Behind him, Fu Haiming pointed out that he wanted this one too. The clerk said it was the only one left. The bouncer says the highest bidder wins. Then, to the astonishment of a crowd, Ling Xiao was here. Fu Ximing told Ling Xiao that there are still people grabbing for the mouse. Ling Xiao's hand was on Fu Ximing's shoulder. Look at me with an eating face. And to show game buyers that you can't give good game items to amateurs, the clerk had no choice but to say that the highest bidder would take it. I wore a playful smile. 10,000 in front of a surprised crowd. Fu Ximing laughed at me for pretending to have money. In front of everyone, Fu Ximing raised the price. I looked at Fu Haiming like he was a fool. Fu Ximing, on the other hand, is wearing a victorious smile. I gave a little laugh. Then I said I'm not going to argue, I'm going to go by my hard drive. Behind him, Fu Ximing breaks through the defense directly. I laughed at him for not being so stupid. Fu Ximing was so angry that his teeth rattled, laughing behind me about my parents' impending divorce. I sneered. I said he's a bastard and he's publicizing it. Fu Ximing was trembling with anger. I hear people around me talking about him being a bastard, too. At his argument, I left frankly. The clerk beside him asked Fu Himin to pay the bill. Fu Ximing points to the bodyguard behind him. I ended up buying what I wanted. Ling Xiao came to talk to me. I just ignored him and walked away. Ling Xiao thought of the way I treated him before, obviously interested in me. The man behind me showed him the video of me and Qin Xiao last night. The video stops at the end of the screen. The people behind me are envious that I can play copies with Mr. Qin. Then he turned his head in the direction I had left. But I'm gone now. I've come to the location that Qin said yesterday. The employee asked me if I had a letter of introduction. I replied doubtfully without a letter of introduction. Then she handed me a note to wait. I'm going to the lounge area. Sit down next to a boy. He asked me if I was on an internal visa. I nodded, and he excitedly stated that he was too. He stated that I was good looking and that I would definitely pass the. I'd say he's pretty clean cut. That's when my phone rang. I opened it and found it was Qin Xiao. I looked up and saw him looking at my phone. I looked at him. He then indicated to Qin Xiao that he was with a clean-cut boy. He quickly waved his hand to show that he was ordinary. At that moment, Qin Xiao opened the message I sent. His face turned ugly. Boys asked me what district the game is in. I indicated that I was in Area C. He excitedly asked me if I knew about the Z of Spades. I carry pride and it feels good to be praised. I asked him how he follows a newbie. He excitedly retorted that the Z of Spades was awesome. I smiled and looked at him. Show him your appreciation. He suddenly turned his head to look somewhere. It's a familiar figure. The man was surprised. Surprised that I showed up. It occurred to me that this was yesterday with Fu Ximing. Each of the three had a different expression. The boys whispered to me that the man in front of me was the manager. The manager told us to keep up. Take us to the gaming room. He said the first level tested our hand speed. I found a random computer. Looking to the computer in front of him showing the says it's easy. With a crackle, the manager was walking around. Then he heard a voice and turned his head to look at me. I showed him I was done. The manager looked at the material in my hand. Shady means I have to test it 3 times. I said I'd take the first one. He was so angry he snatched the paper out of my hand. Don't be angry. Don't be arrogant. And then there's a whole lot more. The people around us look at us like we're watching. And then threw my writing in the air. I looked at the paper at my feet. His face was full of triumph. I grimaced. Pick up the paper at your feet. Hold it in front of him. Just rip the paper off. Everyone around me was talking about my move. I pointed at him and said he was nothing. He's got him on his back. Then left under the wrath of the manager. The man with the eyes saw me leave. I'll be right behind you. By the time I got downstairs, I heard another voice behind me and turned my head to look. Ask him how he got out. He said he didn't want to be there, and that the manager is not good. I looked at the defensive boy in front of me. He scratched his head as if he didn't feel very good about his lie. I'm looking at this dorky boy in front of me. He offered to go to Hot Pot, and that it tastes good. I said I could go, but then I said I didn't have any money, so I'd invite him next time. He scratched his head and said that the Hot Pot restaurant was his home. And in the conference room at that moment, Mr. Chin is in a meeting. Look to your mobile phone and always be aware of its messages. The employee on the sidelines finished his report. The people around us are discussing the state of Qin Xiao today. At this time the person next to me wanted to ask Qin Xiao a question. Qin Xiao interrupted to say that the email was sent to him, and then left in full view of the crowd. Inside the corridor at this time, the man chased after Qin Xiao and asked him if he wanted to rest. Qin Xiao said it's not necessary. The agent came running at this point to ask about Z of Spades. The agent looked at Qin Xiao with a joyful face, and at this point in the gaming room, the manager indicated to the crowd the opposite of what had just happened. He spoke excitedly, not realizing that the crowd was surprised to see Mr. Qin back. The manager was sweating cold. Qin Xiao, how the economist, looked at the manager with a cold face.